All right. We will begin going conference by conference here in the Big Ten. A couple of big headliners, of course, as we've mentioned, a lot of these along the way. Arthur Smith getting hired as Ohio State's offensive coordinator. Chip Kelly taking over at Northwestern. Very interesting hire there. Gary Patterson is back in the game. He will be USC's defensive coordinator. A lot of that because D'Anton Lynn, he's heading back to Penn State. He'll be the defensive coordinator for Matt Campbell in Happy Valley. We get a very interesting staff for Kyle Whittingham at Michigan that includes Jason Beck coming with him over from Utah, but then Jay Hill leaving BYU. A few other promotions internally, including what we've got at Oregon. Illinois just introduced its new defensive coordinator. Tom, obviously, Bobby Hawk, aggressive, attacking. He's saying all the words that any Illinois fan wants to hear. But on this list, when you're looking at the Big Ten, what jumps out to you as some of the impactful or interesting? Where would you like to start this conversation?
I mean, Chip Kelly, Northwestern is just, it's a wild. I mean, you think of the career path that Chip Kelly has been on these last few years, where it was, the head coach at UCLA. We had our $1 million meal table jokes for all those times. But then, he leaves to become the offensive coordinator at Ohio State. And it's like, wow, guys at a sitting Big Ten school is leaving his head coaching gig to go be an OC somewhere, wins a national title, tries to give the NFL another shot, gets fired during the season, so he doesn't even last a full season. And now he's coming back to be the OC at Northwestern, where if you think of what Northwestern football has been for so long, and then you think of what Chip Kelly has been known as for so long as far as an offensive coordinator, the two don't really mix up. So I don't know if it's going to work or not. I just think it's a fascinating pairing because Northwestern is going to look a lot different than you're typically used to seeing Northwestern look.
Aiden Childs is our quarterback too?
Yeah.
Okay.
Interesting.
Very interesting. But is that one of our mean median deviations? Do we have a range of outcomes there that can sort of like span the entire probability spectrum?
Interesting fit. I mean, not a whole lot of drop back stuff from Chip Kelly. Guys got some mobility. I guess we'll see. We'll see how that works there. I think Childs probably needed a change of scenery, certainly, and I could see it working. I think I'm going to go Michigan here. Like just the Jason Beck and Jay Hill. I don't think any team upgraded their coordinators more than Michigan did this offseason.
We'll add head coach there. Like if you're going to say like all,
clearly.
All three, it's just whoa.
I mean, who's close? Yeah, right. So
okay, maybe Virginia Tech because the head coach is now the defensive coordinator where he should be, and you got James Franklin in as head coach. Yeah, I mean, not to send astray at a team we'll talk about a little later in the show, but your point here, especially impactful, meaning the impact on the Big Ten title race, impact on the college football playoff race, Bryce Underwood, everything. Yes, 100%.
Yeah, I think that's probably the one you really got to be happy with. Just because I thought they were kind of lacking at the coordinator spots last year as well, a little bit. Like I don't think the hires they made were quite what they had in prior years, and now I think they're back and close to that level. The other one, I guess I would say, Oregon. I'm interested offensively. Like losing Stein and going to Maringer I don't really know what to think there. I know we're expected to come with takes. That's kind of a wait and see for me. Hampton, I think I like that internal promotion. It would not shock me if they improve there, honestly.
Wow. Well, hold on. So Hampton came from Tulane,
right,
where he did a very good job. He is, I agree with you, based on what I can tell, very respected as a defensive coach within the industry. Is that a criticism of now head coach Tosh Lupoy?
I mean, I don't think it's a criticism. You just have to recognize what people's strengths are. I think Tosh's strengths are probably more, getting players, culture, that kind of thing. Not to say he's a bad defensive coach, certainly.
Right.
Like he's been around a lot of really good ones. But I was kind of like, all right, Saban didn't let him call it, right? You know, again, I'm not saying Hampton will be an upgrade. I don't think this is a real hot take. Yeah, it would not shock me if he was.
Arthur Smith, excited to see that one. See what the going to the NFL for the defensive coordinator hire seemed to work pretty well for Ohio State. Arthur Smith's got a ton of talent to work with. I think he's going to be really good for them. And you talk about one of the more scrutinized positions. I mean, Ryan Day was taking heat once Brian Hartline. I don't even think Brian Hartline was calling the plays that much this season, but because he took them back and because they lost, a lot of eyeballs and criticism came on Ryan Day. This will be probably one that we talk about throughout the season, maybe more than any of these, potentially.
I think another interesting one in the Big Ten is D'Anton Lynn at Penn State, because it's interesting. You know, Chip, you mentioned by joking about Illinois' new defensive coordinator, and like one of the reasons Bielema was bringing in Hawk is because he said that, you know, with the 3-3-5, Illinois' defense has been kind of copied by other programs in the league from a few years ago. He's like, so we weren't really a tough, you know, prep anymore. We weren't different. He wanted to bring in a 3-3-5 because not nearly as many schools, especially in the Big Ten, are running it. Well, the 3-3-5 is what Matt Campbell and John Haycock were running at Iowa State for years. And now he's taking over at Penn State, and he's bringing in D'Anton Lynn, who's coming to his alma mater, but does not run the 3-3-5. So I think it's a very interesting. He's going to still be running that typical Penn State defense. I wonder if there will be an adjustment period there for Matt Campbell, because they did bring a lot of players from Iowa State in the transfer portal who are used to playing in a different defense than they'll probably be playing in next year. So that could be an interesting one to keep an eye on.
Yeah, Lynn's impact at USC, sort of the way that I've got it written, was a little bit of getting them to be a tougher group, right? I don't know if there was a huge change in terms of the schematics of what they were doing. They had some talent. They've had talented players on that side of the ball. They were just performing at a level that was a little bit closer to their talent. Some of that I'm going to put on coaching as well. I don't know if the Penn State defense is going to have as much talent as the USC defense did last year.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. I mean, I don't know if they don't, but it's not like clear to me that
right. I've said I don't know. Like let's be clear. The words were I don't know if, and right. So it'll be interesting to see what ends up happening there, how they end up playing that. But I do think that in terms of the Matt Campbell 2-year, 3-year, 4-year outlook, Lynn's a great hire. You know, like that's one that I think you've got to be really encouraged and excited about.
They also got Tyson Veit back, who was Cincy's DC, who was prior pretty important defensive coach on Campbell's staff at Iowa State. Mm-hmm. So he's going to coach backers there. So you're plucking like a sitting P5 DC to come be your backers coach.
Before we pivot out of the Big Ten,
which tells me like defensive coaches probably love working for Matt Campbell. You know, like you're getting 2 active Power 5 DCs to come be your DC or to come be coached on your defensive staff.
Hey, well, listen, be careful. Kalen DeBoer hired like 9 active defensive coordinators for his first defensive staff at Alabama. I couldn't ever figure out how many cooks were in that kitchen. You know, who was end up calling what plays. It'll be, you still got to be able to fall in line. But to your point, they wouldn't do it if Campbell wasn't there.
I love Tom stoking the tailgate into thinking we're only talking Big Ten today.
What if I just scroll all Big Ten?
Just somebody shows up and we're talking Big Ten and he thinks, is that all we're talking about is the Big Ten? It's like the show literally just started, idiot.
Bobby Houck, did you see his comments when he went scorched earth on everything coaching and what changed? A couple $1 million?
Nothing changed. Go read what he said. All he talked about was being a head coach.
Yeah.
He didn't say I'm retiring from coaching. He just said being a head coach. I'm tired of being a head coach.
But it's like to fire off a criticism of the modern landscape, NIL, transfer portal, and the like.
Dealing with agents.
Dealing with agents.
But guess what? He's not dealing with it, Illinois.
Do you think there was a deal in place?
Yes.
He could. You do.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Because Bielema identified when they were going to announce the hire like a week ago, right, Tom?
Yeah, he said it was going to be the day after the Super Bowl, which caused people to think it was going to be somebody on one of the Super Bowl staffs. Like I was digging through the Seattle because he mentioned there was going to be a scheme change, and then he said it was going to be after the Super Bowl. So everybody, Mike McDonald's defense, that whole the 2-4-5, whatever the hell you want to call it, everybody's going nuts. So I was going through all that. There was a lot of smoke. It was going to be Chris Partridge. Nope, Bobby Hawk the whole time.
It's which says to me that it's like a processing hiring thing, that whether it was the old job or the new job, we just had to wait for a date to pass or for something to go through to be able to get there. But yes, Bobby Hawk there. Before we pivot out of the Big Ten or stay in the Big Ten for the next 25 minutes. But I do think, did Dan Lanning make the right decision is going to be a fascinating point in my analysis of Dan Lanning as a head coach. Like this, you've got Dante Moore back, right? So, and I don't think Dante Moore comes back if he's not excited about the opportunity to be able to keep things moving in the right direction with Drew Merringer. But, you are Oregon. You have resources. You had Dante Moore. Could he have walked to the open market and been able to attract a superstar, rock star kind of offensive coordinator hire? Probably. But he decided to keep it in-house. If it works, it's just another check mark in Dan Lanning being one of the top coaches in the country. And if it doesn't work out, then maybe we start to say, hey, that might have been a miss. He's going to have a long coaching history. There's going to be a lot of ups and downs. But for a team that is going to be competing for a national championship, the decision to keep it in-house, I think, is going to be an interesting wrinkle in that story.
Should we read anything into the fact that the four of us are having a discussion about the notable coordinator hires in the Big Ten, and the Big Ten only, no other conferences? And we discussed pretty much everybody, and we haven't mentioned the fact that Gary Patterson was hired by USC.
Oh, yeah. How do we overlook that one? Yes.
I think because we talked about it, it was a late hire, and we did like a whole segment on the show,
Yeah.
But it is weird.
That is one of the most intriguing ones out there for sure.
I am to talk about to be, I need to go through and make sure that I've reset all my notes here. But there are a lot of my favorite players off that USC defense that are not going to be back for 2026.
Yeah.
So, and they've got the number one recruiting class, but not all those freshmen are not all going to be able to come in and have an impact on USC's efforts to try to go make the college football playoff. So all of Gary's X's and O's, scheme them up, cause all the problems and headaches for opposing quarterbacks and offensive coordinators. You might need that, This might be a little bit of a bridge or a pivot year. Again, I'll before we start getting into the full win totals and all that, I'll make sure that I'm up to date. But just as some of my favorite players from the USC defense are not going to be back, so it'll be interesting to see what the change is there. I think Gary Patterson's interesting. It'll be very, very interesting replacement there for D'Anton Lynn.